if you want to control the disease in Africa, you should concentrate on the African. And there are things in the African, the biochemistry of the African, and the treatment that were adopted by traditional healers that you should examine. The treatment of traditional healers is in fact a very big part of my research. Why those treatments worked, but we have forgotten. We forgot that those treatments work. As I said before, they treated fever. Fever is what they knew. Every child suffers from fever. And if a mother has a child on her back or in her arm, skin to skin, and that baby's temperature rises by fraction of a degree above her own temperature, she would know that this child is ill. So every village you go to, they will tell you this is what we use to treat fever. There are anti-fever remedies everywhere. One of the first things I did when I went to Abraka, before we had a proper department of pharmacognosy, was to tell the children, go to your villages. When you come back from your holiday, bring names of plants that the people in your village use to treat fever. And they came back. And the commonest plant in Roboland is a plant called Bukeyeke. It's a small shrub like this. And people know that as an anti-fever remedy. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is that if you use a plant to treat fever and it succeeds, it brings the temperature down, it means that that plant has anti-inflammatory activity. It has anti-inflammatory activity. And now we know that malaria is an inflammatory disease. That is now established. The presence of the malaria in the red cell provokes inflammation. So if you treat inflammation, even though you don't attack the parasite, you treat inflammation, the person who is already semi-immune will recover without touching the parasite. And the parasite will never develop resistance to an anti-inflammatory drug. So my urge is to provide, if I was president of Nigeria, I would say to Nigerian scientists, tackle this problem of malaria. And they can bring together all the biochemists, all the pharmacologists, all the people who can study inflammation and anti-inflammatory drugs and discover that the plants that are anti-inflammatory have different mechanisms for their anti-inflammatory and there we will find a cure for malaria. You don't have to touch the malaria, but if the person has semi-immunity and you use certain medications that take care of the inflammation, the immunity will surge and take care of the parasite. So the ancient Africans who treated malaria, they didn't treat malaria, they treated fever. They were actually treating fever in the way that I'm describing. I mean, they were treating malaria in the way that I'm describing. They were treating malaria by taking care of the inflammation so that the person who is semi-immune, his body, the immunity will surge and eliminate the parasite. That's the point. And what is the immunity that the Africans have? Let me just run through them. There's a natural immunity. Your mother, for example, has some immunity. I don't know how she got it, but she has some immunity. My wife is European from Wales. Is a Welsh woman. Yeah. She's lived in Nigeria for 40 or 45 years. She doesn't take anti-malaria. She doesn't take prophylaxis. She doesn't take anything to do with malaria. So her case, and many other Niger wives, foreign women living in Nigeria, who have lived there for an extended period of time, don't take any anti-malaria. So it shows that malaria is something that ordinary people, if they are there and they treat themselves carefully, can acquire immunity to. Then there is the immunity that the African has, the kind of that is linked to the ability to generate high levels of gamma globulin, which is in addition to that immunity, acquired immunity. Then there are the genetic adaptations. As Paul was saying, the parasite, the malaria, the plasmodium, does not want to kill the human being. Because if the presence of the parasite killed the person every time it entered the person, the parasite itself will cease to exist. So it always finds a way to protect the host. And it has done this to a very sophisticated effect in the human being. It has equipped the African with so many devices. The sickle cell thing is one device. If you have a sickle cell gene, you are protected, provided you don't have a double dose of the sickle cell gene. If you have a double dose, you die. But if you have one dose, that is to say you require the S for one parent and A from the other parent, you are a healthy individual with high protection against malaria. There is an enzyme called glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, G6PD, which is present in the body to protect the red cell from degradation, from toxic substances. If you don't have that enzyme, you are protected from malaria. There is what we call
if you don't have that, or if you
don't have the enzyme, if you are deficient in the enzyme,
which Africans are?
Yeah, many Africans, 30% of Africans are deficient in G6PD. Then there is a thing we call persistent fetal hemoglobin. The hemoglobin of the infant, of the child when it's born, is quite different from the adult hemoglobin. After a while, it changes to adult hemoglobin. But many Nigerians, because of malaria, have a high amount of fetal hemoglobin in their blood.
As adults?
Adults, which protects them against malaria. And many others. And more important, most important of all, is that if you feed the infant with breast milk, that during the feeding, if you don't feed, you feed the infant with breast milk and you give them clean water to drink and nothing else, that infant will not suffer from malaria. Because breast milk lacks one particular agent called para-aminobenzoic acid, which the parasite requires to grow. And it is not present in breast milk. It's present in other foods, in cow milk, but not in human breast milk. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that if you take care of that child, the chances that they will survive, malaria will not kill them. That's my point. We have not taken all of these things into account in our fight against malaria, because our approach is Eurocentric. What we are trying to do really is to protect the non-immune person from dying from malaria. We are not trying to protect the African. Although now we are using the death of African children as a propaganda to incite sympathy and make people like Bill Gates and Belinda Gates and Clinton say, so the simple question to the death of so many children is malaria. Here is money. Go and do it, you know? But if we put the African in the center, then we can begin to do other approaches. And